Hi everyone, my name is Ramanand. I'm from Think to Win. Uh, Thanks for joining us on this Sunday evening. We've been meaning to put together this session for a while now, so it's great that we finally have this going. We're just going to wait for a minute or two and let some more people get in. And as I say in the chat, in case you're joining us, do introduce yourself, use the chat. It's usually on the right hand side if you're using the desktop version. So tell us where you are from, which college you attend, or if you're outside college, like a couple of our audience members, that's fine as well. Add your experiences as well. I'll be switching to a presentation soon, and we'll use that to drive the rest of the session. Once again, thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening. I know you have other demands on your time, but it's good you can make time for this. All right, I'm going to switch to the presentation, which you will see pretty soon. All right, here goes. All right, I hope you can see my So welcome to the quizzing masterclass on becoming a better college quizzer. Let's begin with some housekeeping notes. So you can increase, if you're not used to YouTube streaming, you can increase or decrease the quality of the video you see in the settings. Quality option of the YouTube player. Join the live chat as well. It's to your right in the web version and typically at the bottom in case of the YouTube app. Feel free to ask questions during the live stream. I will try and keep an eye on the chat as we go along. In case I miss your question or you think you want to repeat it at a more appropriate time, do so, don't hesitate. I'll try my best to answer as many questions as possible through the session and especially at the end. And others feel free to add your 2 cents as well. In case there's a problem with this live stream or it ends abruptly, just come back and check our YouTube channel and see if we've restarted it. I'm just covering all bases. All right, so with that, we have a few more people listening to us. So thank you so much for joining us once again. And do introduce yourself using our live chat. We'll keep it going. So to begin with, I'm going to use a couple of questions just to warm ourselves up for today's session. It is a quizzing session after all. So here goes. Here's the first question. And people who are on the more experienced end of the audience today, maybe give the younger guys a chance to crack this before you answer. You can answer using the live chat. If you've got a group of people watching together, then feel free to do this aloud within yourself, or just use the live chat, put your answers there. All right, here's the first question just to get us started. So who famously received an empty autograph book with a lock in the front on June 12, 1942, after choosing it a couple of days before in an Amsterdam bookstore? So easy one, may not be that easy for folks who are on the younger side of our audience today, but take a guess. So who famously received an empty autograph book? It had a lock in the front. It was red in color. The date was June 12, 1942, and this person chose it a couple of days before in an Amsterdam bookstore. Okay, so use the chat, put your guesses down there. If you're not right, it doesn't matter. Okay, Hitler is one guess. Not Hitler, someone who had something to do with Hitler, had a connection to Hitler. So think of books, think why would somebody get a book on this day, which is empty, and lived in Amsterdam, chose it from a book, picked it out a couple of days ago, and received it that day. So maybe think of a gift, maybe. All right, so we've got one correct guess in, but I'm just going to let others think about this a little bit more and see how this fits in. So Avishkar says Anne Frank, and Avishkar, well done, you're right. You can't see me, but I'm giving you a prize right now, so give yourself a round of applause, and well done. So this is Anne Frank, and in terms of how you could work this out, or what are the clues at your disposal, one is that if a person chose it and then received it on a date, probably suggests some kind of a gift. It's empty, so what could you do with a book? The autograph book was a bit of a red herring. She wasn't seeking autographs. She was going to use it as a diary. And a lock in the front, perhaps something that you want to keep secret, like a diary again. So some other clues that you could probably have looked at. All right, good start from Avishkar and all of us. Let's move on to the next question. Here goes. So the answer was Anne Frank. All right, so here's another next question. 3 photographs. What unusual achievement links these 3 people? Not necessarily household faces, but see if you can put this together a little, short on text here, but let's see. Unless you need, I will give more clues, but let's see if you have any guesses first. Part of the charm of quizzing is to be able to come up with random guesses in the absence of useful information. All right, so Ashish says they lost presidential elections. Not quite, but you're in the vicinity of Rashtrapati Bhavan. You're in the ballpark of Rashtrapati Bhavan. So think about it. These are not losers of the presidential election. And this is an exhaustive list. Only 3 people have had this achievement. So that's an additional clue. Unusual achievement in quotes. And only 3 people have had this achievement. These are these 3. The first person is actually, you can probably see that he looks like a judge. Vice presidents is kind of correct, but no, they're not Dalit vice presidents. No, keep the guesses coming in. We still don't have the answers, but some of you are hacking in the right direction. So keep going. Only 3 people have had this achievement. The first person is actually a judge. No, it's not Subbarao. So look, the first person is actually a judge. Okay, okay, Ashish is really close to the answer now. He's 1 letter away from the correct answer. I'm going to let this go for another 5 seconds before I give out the answer to this. All right, so okay, so I'm going to split. I'm going to give Ashish some brownie points here. Let's look at the answer. Okay, these are the only 3 people who have become acting presidents. Yes, Shashank slips that one in. Only 3 acting presidents of India. The first is Justice Hidayatullah. He was a justice. Then V.V. Giri and B.D. Jatti. Okay, so only 3 acting presidents of India. Some interesting stories behind why they became acting presidents, especially in the case of Hidayatullah. Just read it up. It's pretty interesting. So, yeah, Ashish, familiar feeling, very close, but not the right answer. And our third question, before we go on to the more serious part of the session. All right, so in sports question, cricket, in a 1979 test match between Australia and Pakistan at Perth, Andrew Hilditch was given out handled the ball on appeal by the bowler Sarfraz Nawaz. So what was unique about this dismissal? This is the only time this has happened in a test match. one of my favorite anecdotes from the world of cricket. So what's going on? Okay, any sports fans around, or even if you're not really a cricket fan, you should be able to take a guess. It's something that you can figure out an option to. Think about this. No. So Sport Freak, he was given out handle the ball. So the leg didn't enter the question. Very, very unusual dismissal, unique in tests. And if you know anything about Pakistan cricketers, especially at that time, or somebody like Sarfraz Nawaz, a classic anecdote that typifies Pakistan in some sense, and also, it all came about because relations between the two teams were very poor in this match. Oh, okay, good. Ashish built on the answer from Shashank. So the interesting thing is that I'll just bring up the answer and show you that. So Hilditch was actually at the non-striker's end. He was merely returning the ball to the bowler. And as I said, relations were really poor, and Sarfraz Nawaz, appealed. The umpire had no choice but to give him out. Okay, technically that was handling the ball. So he's the only non-striker to have been given out handling the ball. Handling the ball is a very rare event anyway, and often teams don't appeal in case it's very, very blatant. This was amazing. So again, something to read about. All right, so let's move on from the questions. I hope you are sufficiently warmed up to think about the questions. And again, if you want to think about back as to how you could have worked this out, I leave it to you as an exercise. But just think of, if you couldn't get the answer, how would you have, whether this would have been workable to you or not. All right, so once again, welcome to the session. And if you are joining us, this is a quizzing masterclass by Think to Win on becoming a better college quizzer, and I'm Ramanand doing this session on behalf of Think to Win. A little bit about me. My name is Ramanand, and I was really keen on quizzing in school, but as it turned out, I got to go only to 4 quizzes when I was in school. This is right up to 12th standard. I finally got a chance to go ballistic with quizzing when I joined a College of Engineering in Pune, which had an active quiz group which met every Saturday without fail, except maybe if, even I can even remember when we had floods, we still, met. This is a precursor to the boat club, quiz club, as we, some of you may have heard of the Pune-wide quiz club. I formally began hosting quizzes since 2001, starting off at COEP's own quiz. I was also fortunate to find more quizzing at IIT Bombay later, where I did my master's. And I began hosting professionally since 2005. Now, under the banner of Think to Win, we do a lot of things with and using quizzing, and a lot of my experiences of quizzing in beyond college quizzing as well has come in the last couple of years with Think to Win. All right, so and today's talk is based on these 3 intersecting circles. One is stuff that fortunately happened to me, like going to a college which had an active quizzing circle with a lot of really good quizzers who also were nice enough to kind of shepherd me and people like me into the world of quizzing. It is also a collection of things that I wish I knew back in 1997 when I started college quizzing. And it's also a bunch of personal opinions. So don't take any of this as dogma. Somebody else may have a completely different view of things, which is perfectly fine. This is my opinion. So this is an intersection of these 3 things. So at the end of it, maybe in 4 years' time, hopefully you will have a similar set of ideas for yourself, what worked and what didn't work, that you will pass on to somebody else. So today's talk is mainly focused on quizzers new to college quizzing. So folks on the other end of the spectrum, the older guys, we find this a little rudimentary. That's fine. Add your comments wherever you will talk about. And again, once again, if you have questions that I don't catch during the live chat now, I try and repeat them a little later. I'll try and answer as many questions as possible. So this talk is organized by actions that you can take over the short, the medium, and the long term. Uh, it's a lot about building your own quizzing system rather than focusing on specific quizzes or goals. And that's what we do a lot in Think to Win, as well as in our parent label called Choose to Think. We will tackle questions like how to prepare for a quiz, and we'll also talk a little bit about handling themes, formats, and questions. We may not be able to just do justice to all of this today, but we'll take a shot at most of this. So we mentioned, this is for people who are making the transition from school quizzing to college quizzing. Particularly, this is an India-centric thing largely. And so in my mind, I have the conventional college quizzing that is practiced in most urban quizzing centers of India. It's become a very conventional choice for most academic academic institutions in India. So what's different from school quizzing and college quizzing? So in college quizzing, there is no syllabus as such. The general quiz can be a vast universe, and a school quiz often, people go with these notions of what can be asked or what should be asked, and that's very, focused on kinds of things that you would see in a resource like, say, a Manorama quiz book. So there is a certain implied syllabus, but here there isn't. You can't really say this is out of the syllabus. So there isn't a lot of preparation that you can really do, unlike what you might have done with schools or what your teachers may have told you to do. College quizzing in India supposedly has questions that you can work out, which means that it has few hints, and the quiz master will insist that you can work many of these questions out. But oftentimes they can just be extremely verbose and tiresome questions to read. And I'm talking from personal experience. There are these complex formats and beasts called bounds and pounds and connects that you don't really encounter in school quizzing. And you will encounter a lot of strange quiz masters and stranger participants who seem to know the answer as soon as the quiz master clears his throat for the next question. So that's all par for the course in an Indian college quizzing scenario. So if you were to take the three questions that we just saw and kind of compare them with the school version. So most school versions would have been like this. Okay, so take the first question. The first question would have probably been a single line question asking who started a diary in April 1942, or which famous Dutch girl's diary was published after her death in 1947, and so on. So you wouldn't see the additional hints or the red herrings, a slightly longish question like what I presented. The second question might have just been name the three Indians who served as acting president. It's not the other way around. It's a little more relies on your memory, ability to recall information, which you might have only got if you had read an encyclopedia. The Andrew Hilditch question probably would not have been even asked, because Andrew Hilditch isn't really a famous cricketer, and this is from 1979. And honestly, you don't expect a school quizzer to get that, because you would expect them not to have read it, and therefore it would have been considered out of the syllabus. No one would have encouraged you to think about the answer a lot, which in the college quiz circuit, people would kind of at least insist that you take an informed guess. All right, so the three questions that we saw would perhaps not have made it to any college quiz. We've occasionally attempted bringing a flavor to school quizzes, and school quizzes have enjoyed that, but there are pros and cons to that, which we won't talk about today. All right, so let's move on then to the first of our three sections, which is what do you do in the short term? So your biggest challenges as a young college quizzer is figuring out this whole new world of college quizzing, competing with older people who know all the sources, who know all the shortcuts, who know all the sitters, and and you're left wondering what's happening while somebody's taking away all the points. And some of these formats like pounds and all can actually work against you if you're young, because you don't really know how to work. I'm not defining or explaining pounds here for the benefit of people, but you will soon figure that out. So there are these issues that you deal with. I think the biggest challenge is staying motivated. I remember when I was in college in the first year, and you had so much trouble kind of even understanding formats or understanding questions, that just staying motivated was sometimes a challenge. So what do we do about these three challenges? So here's my first suggestion. First is just attend as many quizzes as you can. Okay, and don't worry about the result. Just go in there, get used to these quizzes, attempt them, and analyze what you did. Don't be too harsh on yourself. Think whether you should have got this answer or not. So for example, with the vice president's question or with the Andrew Hilditch question, uh, could you have got the answer if you had thought about it a little bit, or did it rely too much on your knowledge of some part of the past? If it's more of a knowledge question and you didn't know that piece of information, then really, honestly, you shouldn't have got it, and you could just have got it only through pure chance. Uh, but with something like the Andrew Hilditch one, perhaps you could have thought a little bit and got it. So there's a little subjective, but if you can answer this question, should I have got this answer, and figure out whether it's a gap in your knowledge or it's a gap in the way you approach or look at different pieces in the question, then you will know what to do with that. So if you didn't know that, you file it away in your memory. If it was a more of a problem of process, you try and work out those kinks as you go about. So attempt and analyze. Now this is what a lot of people don't do. They attempt the prelims, they do really poorly, and they head off somewhere else to kind of drown their sorrows. Don't do that. Stay back for the final, watch, take notes, and try and see what people on stage are doing. But again, figure out these formats, figure out what's going on for some time. Just stay back for the final. Okay, don't worry about whether you're getting it or not. Just stay back and see what's going on. And most importantly, expect to be overwhelmed. This happened to all of us. It's going to happen to you. So just expect to be overwhelmed, and then you know that you can deal with it. It's only when you go in there and you completely find it, it's almost like you're a member of an under-19 team playing the fearsome quartet of the Caribbean Pacers or something like that. Everything is a bouncer. That is going to happen, so don't worry about that, but just attend as many quizzes. That's something that you can control, so do that. The second suggestion is strengthen your reading and note taking. So if you're not the reading kinds, I would say become one. A lot, tends to correlate a lot with good quizzers. If you don't like reading a lot, then just find a way of getting information that suits you. Okay, so just do that, but strengthen your reading. It's a great way to get information very quickly. So what should you be reading? Again, this is from a quizzing point of view. Honestly, I think you should just be reading, irrespective of whether it helps your quizzing or not. But let's say if quizzing is your, the reason you pick up reading, and you want to say do help in your quizzing, then look for engaging books with breadth. Okay, to begin with. Again, what do I mean by that? So there's a great book by Bill Bryson called a Short History of Nearly Everything. Now, those of you who've read it will know it takes this really fine sweep across history and science, tells you a lot of things that you didn't know, tells you a lot of stories about things you probably already knew. But at the end of it, you remember a lot, you have a lot of breadth in one go, and it is really engaging. You really like reading this book. So look for books like these. We will try and put up a list later for some of our recommendations. But when I mean engaging books with breadth, I have something like Bill Bryson. A yearbook or an encyclopedia may not be particularly engaging, but unless you're a hardcore quizzer who just likes lists or upon lists, if that engages you, great, go for it. But there are a lot of books, and this is particularly true of different themes and genres. Pick up something that introduces you. We'll talk more about that in the presentation, but go for things that are interesting books and channels that are interesting to you. Seek randomness. Don't stick to what you only like, what your pet topics are. Go for random things. Just pick up a book, read a little bit about it, uh, expand your horizons, and make it again a part of what you do. Okay, and here is something that I see a lot of people doing. They stick to reading quiz questions because again, it's easily available off the net. Try and read originals as well. Try and watch the movie from which you've heard a quiz question. Uh, Read the credits, look at the movie carefully. Get into this quizzer mode where you kind of scrutinize everything while trying to enjoy the movie as well. Do the same thing for books as well, but go to the original, go to the sources. Don't just consume them via quiz questions. You will find yourself that you'll enjoy the process a lot more. So strengthen your reading, strengthen your ability to kind of pick notes from these sources. Figure out a way, use an old-fashioned notebook, use Evernote, whatever works for you. But figure out a way to strengthen this. This is going to really work out well for you, and not just point of view. All right, so we've seen 2 suggestions so far. Attend a lot of quizzes. Even so, I saw some mention of open quizzes. Absolutely, they're going to be completely above your pay grade, as they say. So expect to be overwhelmed, but just go there. You will encounter a lot of interesting stories, interesting things. Go and look for places where you can read more about them. And just look at them as ways to, as recommendations for what your open quizzers are dabbling with. Okay, so look at open quizzes as a way just to kind of soak in that atmosphere. All right, so we've talked about bookmarking and writing stuff you find interesting. So let's go to the third part, which is something that people didn't tell me, which I realized later, which is find your group. Quizzing is a social activity. Okay, we may all be very asocial, antisocial type of people, but we congregate with each fellow quizzers. So quizzing is a social activity. So find a club, find a group that works for you. So I want to ask you all a question. Do you have access to a quiz club near you? If you have, just yes or no, just put that in the live chat so I get a quick sense of whether you have access to a club. If you don't have a club, then start one. Okay, and thanks to the internet and thanks to social media, you can actually get access to something or the other very easily. Unlike few years earlier, where you were restricted to your by geography to your own city or town or your own academic institution. Now it's a lot easier to find these fellow-minded quizzes. So if you don't have it, find them, because no problem. Anyone who has access to a club, tell us if you do. Because you need, again, motivation that will come from each other. You need solace. You need when you got 5 out of 40. You need to kind of find somebody else in the same boat. You need some amount of companionship around quizzing. So it's great if you have access to one. If not, start one. And if you have some access to something that is irregular, help make it regular. You will find immense benefit with this. And I realized that much later that one of the reasons I stayed quizzing, even there were occasions where things were very difficult, was that I had a group of people that were interesting to be around, who didn't always show off their quizzing prowess, who were just nice quizzers to be happy with. So find your group as well. So if you just started off in quizzing, go to a lot of quizzes, strengthen your reading and note-taking habit, and find your group. And hopefully a few months later, 3 months, 6 months later, 1 year later, you are reaching the next phase, which is the medium term. And here your challenges change a little bit. One is, your big challenges now will be becoming competitive. Now you've kind of soaked in the atmosphere a little bit. Can you start giving these quizzers a run for their money and getting on stage? And this whole point of going beyond your strengths. So what do you do when you're not good at certain topics and those topics feature a lot in these quizzes? and that you think is holding you back. All right, so here's our big question. A lot of people have asked that in the registration as well. The how do I prepare for a quiz question theme? So here's my take on it, and again, people will say different things, but here's what I think about it. A lot of experienced quizzers will kind of cock a snook at this and say, "Oh, you can't really prepare for the quiz, and you shouldn't." My view is that most college and open general quizzes are not prep friendly, so it's pointless trying to prepare for one. If a quiz really is that predictable, then by all means prepare. Okay, if you are going to some of these big money quizzes which repeat their questions and have a very fixed way of dealing with things, by all means prepare. I mean, you why shouldn't you prepare? Uh, the great advantage that you have here is that you have these 12-14 years of Indian education that will that's prepared you very well for this day. They'll let you will know you guys are better placed than anyone to actually prepare for these quizzes, exam like quizzes, wherein you know what the syllabus is, you will have access to people who've done this in the past, and you will be able to crack it. That's what's got you so far, and that's what will take you in these quizzes. So by all means, if you go to a predictable quiz, prepare. And so that's one of the reasons I'm not talking about specific quizzes in this session, though some of you asked me to, because I really don't think there's much of interest in that. What is interesting is what if you can't prepare for a quiz. So then what do you really do? So my answer is you build a system around quizzing. You get interested in quizzing that so much so that you're doing it most of the time, even though you're not consciously doing it, and that's what helps you do well at a quiz over a period of time. So should you be mugging up information before a quiz? Sometimes yes. So sometimes it really helps accelerate the process. You're highly motivated, you want to do well at a quiz, so use that as a way of quickly reading a book or consulting a resource or looking at a slide share. It gets you in the process of thinking for quizzes. So eventually you will become good enough so that you will tell others that, hey, I don't prepare for a quiz. Okay, so that's what I think about preparing a quiz. But so that's what I will leave it at. And this is one of those things that we can keep talking about. And all right, so yeah, just if you're new to the live stream, this is Ramanand from Think to Win, and we're trying to answer questions around how does somebody making the transition from school to college quizzing do well. All right, the next big question that a lot of people have asked is the I don't know anything about insert your own topic here problem. The most common fill in the blank there is sports, but people have also talked about other topics like business and so on. So here is how I would do it, and I think this is how I went about doing it. Not that I tried to specifically solve these issues. I am a generalist quizzer first, but fortunately I've been interested in most of the the broad topics like sports and culture and films and politics and things like that. But with subjects like arts, especially the visual arts, not particularly good at it. I'm still not particularly good at it, and I have trouble distinguishing my Manet from my Monet and so on. The way I've dealt with it is uh, stories, movies, histories, biographies, they really help. Okay, so instead of going off to mug up stats, I would rather read a biography of a sports person. I would rather watch a movie about, say, Van Gogh. I would rather read an interesting history. I would rather focus on interesting stories. Okay, and a lot of research shows that this is what helps you remember stuff. Stories really are sticky, so I would rather do this. This is a better use of my time. And again, if I was taking an art quiz and I knew the syllabus, I might go off and prepare. But in a general sense, I would not. I would do something like this. I would probably just team up with people who like these topics. So in college, I wasn't particularly good at Western music. I'm still not. So unfortunately, my partner was decent at that, aspect. So we kind of managed to make standard guesses. So that's the other thing. So you should at least have one standard go-to guesses that you go to, and if so in our case, we would say something like Banana Rama, or we would say Metallica, and the chances of that being right was always high. And the BCQC, we had this thumb rule that when in doubt, say George Bernard Shaw, and you'd be surprised how often that is. So I'm sure there's an equivalent for every generation. Just find it, and you should be good. See if you can really genuinely get interested. Go to a few of these themed quizzes. A lot of themed quizzes are a little niche. They are fine. I mean, they don't need to be workable because they are for people who are interested in that theme. It's perfectly fine. But go there and see if you can. The good quiz masters will try and put questions that are of a more general in nature. So that's a good way of getting into some of these themes. And what, if you really can't get interested in it, then let it be. Focus on your strength, focus on things that you like. You don't need to do it just because it's an exam. You already have the rest of academics for that. Just do things that you like. If you again if you like a particular topic and you don't have enough quizzes on that, find them, make your own, get people interested in that. So just I wouldn't say in the long run it's worth forcing yourself to go through all that just to do well at a quiz. Okay, that's where we separate quiz from reality and life. So this is what I would recommend. Get into stories, read random books. There are a lot of interesting books across genres which are really well written. So seek them. I've read books ranging from the history of fashion to a biography of the nose and whatnot. So chances are very high that you will find a book or a documentary or a movie. So go off and get that and get into that rather than trying to just cram your way through that. All right. So the third big point a lot of people did ask was about working out answers. So here is something that I thought represents working out answers in really easy terms. So working out answers really is a combination for me of some prior knowledge, making a connection between the hints that are supposedly there, and doing all this really quickly in the context of a quiz. And again, the more you do it, the better you will get at it. It's a little bit like solving cryptic clues in crosswords, rather than solving an equation where there's a series of steps that you can always follow in every situation. So those of you who do solve cryptic crosswords will know what I'm talking about. Sometimes the clues are hard to find. They can be very subjective. They can be in the minds of the crossword setter, and you don't see it, and it doesn't resonate with you. So in fact, solving cryptic clues is a good parallel to quizzing and solving workable questions in quizzing. So you can do that as well. But the more you do it, the better you get at spotting these hints. Again, you're trusting that the quizmaster has put in clues and not just pasted stuff from Wikipedia and calling it workable questions. So look out for these hints. Look out for also red herrings that can lead you astray. And you'll get better with practice. The reason we have a lot of workable questions is because it's often just a lot more fun than just knowing the answer. And again, if you've experienced that high or that aha moment, you'll know what I'm talking about. So that's why we like working out answers. In this case, teamwork is really useful. Generate more options together. It's all about generating a lot of options. So even if you're stumped, just figure out one or two more options that you can come up with given what what is at hand. So teamwork is really, that's where quizzing becomes a good team sport. You have each other to bounce off ideas, to shine light on hints that you may have disregarded, and always say something aloud. There have been countless occasions where I've not said something aloud to my teammate thinking that this is really dumb, this cannot be the right answer, and it turns that out. So do that. So we will, Ashish, we will try and produce a list later on some of these sources. So we'll come to that soon. All right, so that was about working out answers, and we're again in this medium-term zone. So my fourth suggestion is start setting your own questions and do this regularly. How does this help? It helps you learn to think like a quiz master. If you do it right, if you ensure that you're not stuck to your pet topics, it increases exposure to topics. So for example, you want to, you think Western classical music is something that you should know about because it comes very often in quizzes, and you've tried reading or you've tried mugging up trivia. Try setting questions on that. You will find a lot of information as a result. It will actually help make it memorable for you. Uh, I really find this true from personal experience. So just set a lot of questions across the board, and this is a great way to quiz without worrying about answering questions and therefore worrying about success or failure. You can have a lot of fun setting questions and quizzing others, and this is great. This is something that lets you quiz differently, and you're not really worried about whether I got points for this or not. Okay, so please set your own questions. This is one thing that I would urge you to take away from this. Please set your own questions and do that regularly. Okay, you'll have a lot of fun doing that. We talked about having access to your quiz club, but if it's not active, try and ensure it is. You have access to one. And this is more in the nature of practice. I'm not talking about competitive quizzes. I did mention at the beginning that attend a lot of quizzes, but those tend to be more of competitive quizzes where you may not be on stage. Find a scene where you can attempt every question along with a group of people, and it's somewhat informal. And this was absolutely terrific at the COEP Saturday Quiz Club that I mentioned right at the beginning, and later at the BCQC as well. These active quizzing sessions are really good to let you soak in quiz questions without a lot of pressure on you. So these could be quiz club meets, and if you don't have an active scene, help organize one. Create that for yourself and for people who are following later. More importantly, ensure regularity, ensure a calendar of action. If it's only you who's got to get questions every week and you only have one other person, that's perfectly fine. 2 people, quorum, great, go ahead. Find a place, find a regular time. Make it such that you don't have to even ask if there's going to be a session whenever you're planning it for. You have so much more questions at your disposal from the web, from other friends. So just get those questions out. Make sure that you're also trying to bring themes that other people in your college really like. And you can do a cricket question, you can do a Game of Thrones set, whatever gets people into the door, but ensure regularity. And here you can try different kinds of quizzes and themes. Okay, but just do this. And I'm just going to call out a great suggestion by Harman, who says that they used to challenge each other to make 100% quizzes on a subject that QMs didn't know anything about. 100% quiz is where the QM guarantees that he would have gotten all right. It's a great challenge, and it's difficult to make a quiz on, say, flowers. But once you are done at it, you're really good at that subject, and you have got a great quiz for your friends. So, terrific suggestion, Harman. And just see simple suggestions to make this quiz scene active. It's a good example of practicing quizzing in different circumstances and not this open or college stage. So do that. Have an active quiz scene. So how active is your quiz scene? Tell me in the chats. Tell me if it's quite dull or it's quite active. Just put your answer in the chat so that we all know. I'm going to give you 2 seconds to do that. So we have about 15 minutes left. So just getting to the third segment now, which is what do you do in the long term. So we've looked at the short term, we've looked at the medium term, wherein we are moving from just attending quizzes to getting a little better at them, getting a little competitive at them. So here is my feeling for what a lot of people have as a challenge in the long term, just to stay in love with quizzing even after they've gone out of college. And that's, for me, is a good goal to aim for. So one, there is a lot more to quizzing than just what you see in college and open quizzing. For a lot of time, I used to think that I didn't know that a world outside that existed. It's a little bit like the Truman Show. You're kind of surrounded in a world of your own making. It turns out there is a lot of other quizzing on TV. There is, there's shows like Jeopardy in America, whose questions you can see. There's a different kind of format. There's so much more going on than we know. So if this style of college quizzing, this format, this scenario doesn't work for you, don't worry, still stay quizzing. There are a lot of other ways to quiz. And I think we've been exploring a few of other options in addition to these college and open quizzes. So don't worry, find your own, style, find your own group that may want to do quizzing differently, which may not fit in the college open quizzing. Don't let that dishearten you. As all of us quizzers know, especially the ones that have done it for quite some time, whatever your age be, there are so many positive side effects of quizzing. The friends you make, the information that the kinds of things that you're able to connect. They're just too many to recount. So just keep quizzing. Find a way to stay quizzing. All right, so Shashank, I'm just getting to some of the other questions in a bit, but before that, I'm quickly going to recap what the main thrust of what I wanted to talk about today in one place. How do you go from being a school quizzer to a college quizzer? One is attend as many quizzes as you can, strengthen your reading, find your own social group around quizzing, set your own questions, do that once you're comfortable, if you've seen a lot of questions. Ensure an active practice quiz scene around you, or build it. And remember, there's more to quizzing than just what is there in college and open quizzing. So now in the registration, people also asked, about the few questions. I'm going to take a few of them and quickly go through them. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this either, because I can't do justice to them, or I think I've already answered them in a different, or what I've asked you to do before this will help. How do I take part in specific quizzes like business quizzes, Mela, and so on? I referred you to some of the points earlier. If you've joined us a little late, just see the stream once it's done. I've talked a little bit about getting interested using stories and books and documentaries and things like that, finding the right kind of people to take part with, just trying it out for a few. I don't want to spend too much time here, because I think what I've said applies equally to general as well as these specific quizzes. Then competing in open quizzes, we've talked about that at the beginning. Just go to them, don't worry about how well you do it. Just get used to that whole format. Yes, there are people who are going to be much older to you, seen a lot of these questions in the past, who are just very, very good at this. So it will take time for you to compete. Remember that when it comes to things like pop culture, they will be at a disadvantage. You will be better off. So when questions like that come, you will do better than them. It's okay. There are a lot of people who've been quizzing for a couple of decades now, so it's going to be difficult. You're just going to hope that their neurons start kind of giving up, or the families drive them to do other things, then take away prize money from young quizzers. So maybe that will happen and you'll start doing well. So don't let that deter you, is what I want to say. People asked about different cities and formats across them. There's a lot of homogeneity, unfortunately, across cities. There are a few cities that are still a little different. But again, if you're in that kind of a city, or if you want to explore that, just visit these cities. And again, a lot of the stuff that I mentioned earlier will still apply. All right. Shashank also asked about written quizzes. So written quizzes, they've kind of emerged in the last 10 years or so. I would say that, again, it's okay to not bother about them. It's a very good place to get access to a lot of random information that some quiz master thinks is important. Okay, so you can take that home and like we were talking earlier, do your searches leisurely. Some of these are what I call long form quizzes. The questions are so long that rather than solve them right away, take home a copy. Whenever you have some free time, you try and work them out yourself. Get a group of people together. We've also experimented turning written quizzes into these practice quizzes where we call them out aloud, and therefore the pain is kind of shared along with everyone. So written quizzes, again, it really can be time tiresome. If you don't like it, it's fine. Again, I don't want to turn quizzes into an exam. So if that's what bothers you about them, start slow, ignore them for some time. If they're going to put you off, stay away from them for now. Two main quizzes I want to mention: Mahaquizzer, which is a KQA's quiz. It's really nice. I find it interesting, but it's fairly lengthy and all that. Whereas something like a WQC, the World Quizzing Championship, since it's got to be made for an extremely wide audience, is very know it or you don't. It's very school-like. In some sense, that is liberating because you don't really have to, expend a lot of mental energy. It's very simple. Either you know it or you don't. But again, it gives you a flavor of a wide variety of, possibly interesting topics. Starting and maintaining clubs in colleges, briefly touched upon it earlier. I'm not going to delve into it deeply now. We are planning a couple of follow-up masterclasses as well. So if this is big enough, we'll talk about it in the future. Info on specific quiz events, again, I mentioned I'm not doing that because if they're very preparation oriented, then you guys will do well at them. Framing questions, creating rounds. This is something I'd really like to talk about, but I don't think this session, the time we have, is going to do justice to it. Also because this is not something that maybe a beginner quizzer is going to be interested in. So we'll do one class on this definitely in the future. Somebody also asked if, how you can judge whether news or info is worth remembering. I would say don't bother. If it's one of those quiz-friendly things that you can predict, you have a current affairs thing that will come, and everybody in the next week is going to keep asking about what happened in the past week. Then you kind of recall that or keep that in your cache for some time. But honestly, don't take so much pains. If it's interesting, you will remember it anyway. All right, so at this point, I'm going to pause very, very quickly, give you maybe a minute for all, and kind of look at the chat to see if there are any other questions I haven't looked at. We will also come back to you a little bit later to find out if you have more questions, and we'll address them through one of our channels if I can't do that today. So Jodhbir asked how to become better at, say, business quizzing. I think I've briefly answered that. And again, I'm not a really good business quizzer, and I haven't been to some of these big quizzes, so it's not fair that I answer questions on how you do that. So I'm talking more from a generalist's point of view. We've talked a little bit about writing quizzes. Okay, so I think you guys either have all your questions answered, or you will try and maybe think of them later, and we'll bring them up. We'll answer them later. So one maybe comment from Harish that I'm going to repeat. In the context of identifying which news items are worth remembering. So if you have your quizmaker's lens, the lens that is of a quiz master, you're creating questions yourself, that really helps you. You'll build a sense of what really works and what doesn't work, what is interesting, what is worth remembering and noting down. You'll build that sense for yourself. And that's true of movie credits, that's true of all these little things where the world has missed it and you've spotted it and you don't want to tell anybody out of it. So so you will develop that lens once you start setting questions. So I really encourage you to set questions. Shashank asks how to tackle interesting rounds, especially rounds in my quizzes. Shashank, come to my next quiz and attend an interesting round there, and we'll do a post-mortem after the quiz. Okay, I don't want to spill the beans on my next interesting round right yet. Okay, so I am going to move on to a last couple of slides, and we have a few questions to end, just to wrap things up neatly. Watch out for our ebook. We are planning we have an ebook on college quizzing that we'll mail out to everyone who's registered. In fact, we'll be sending you guys a mailing list that you can join, and we'll be posting some of it there. So please do join that, and we've got a few, couple of theme-based quizzing sets that we've put together, especially for people trying to make this jump up, as well as some of the standard sitters that you often see. So we'll send that out to you. We will be doing a masterclass on framing questions, like I mentioned, and I also mentioned that we'll try and put together a resource on books like the Bill Bryson book I mentioned and other sites to follow. Things that a lot of quizzers have used in the past and really like talking about. All right, so before we go, thank you so much for attending this Sunday masterclass. We have a few questions at the end, but a little before that, some PR for Think to Win on behalf of my colleagues. Do join us on thinktowin.com and also on our social media channels. We have something called as Used to Think that we do every Sunday at 2 p.m. Quiz on Twitter. It helps us learn new things each week as well. We just did a quiz on Indian words in English language today, and next week's edition is on cars, and there's flags, and we also do strange things like famous Russians. So come and join us if you can. On social media, we are on things like everything from Instagram to Facebook to Twitter. So do join us there and send us your questions for future masterclasses as well. So, okay, so thank you again for your time. We will quickly go on to the last 3 questions for today. And here's your first question. And again, remember to chat, put your answers on the chat. Okay. All right. So in Icelandic, the name is Trevor Delgom. In Dutch, it is Martin Asmodome Willen. In French, it is Tom Elvisor Jedusor. What is the name in English? Okay, so bunch of names, and they're a little unusual. If you look at them, they have a lot of letters in common. Okay, I need a more specific answer for English. I haven't seen the right answer yet. Okay, Shashank is giving me the answer, and I think a lot of you. Okay, so this the specific answer to this is Tom Marlborough Riddle, and those of you who have read your Harry Potter know that if you rearrange it, it produces I am Voldemort. So in these 3 languages, these names do the same. Slight variants of it, but that's what they do. All right, so good. Everyone who got it right, give yourself a pat on the back. The next question coming up. And again, if you haven't got this, or if you did get it, just think how you got it. Did you just know this, or did you work it out? And can you tease out your mental process when you did this? All right, second last question for today. You know what an anagram is. We referred to that in the previous question. I'm sure you know what a telegram is, even though most of you, grew up in the era after that. You probably also know what a tangram is. It's a puzzle. But what is a pangram? It's a very famous example of a pangram, but what is a pangram? Okay. So think about this, very little information, but you could probably work this out by looking at the word pangram, transplit it, see if you can delve into a little bit of etymology here. Etymology features a lot in quizzing. So if you want to do well at certain kinds of questions, if you know your Sanskrit, or you know a little bit of Greek or Latin roots, or if you can even look at what it is in your own mother tongue, it usually helps. All right, we have the right answer from Shashank. This is, pangram is a sentence that has all the letters in the alphabet. Probably the most famous example is a quick brown fox. So in Greek, pan means all and gram means word. So that's one way to arrive at the answer. So well done. That's pangram. And for our last question today, it's going to come from Bollywood. Jagdish Raj and Iftikhar were the 2 most commonly seen cops in Hindi cinema. In fact, Jagdish Raj holds a record for the most number of appearances as a policeman in films. Now, aptly, which Devanand starrer was his first film as a inspector? Okay, I'm sure again, this is something that I know is, came long before any of us was born, even me. So which movie would this? I'm just expecting you to now work it out. I know that all of you haven't, you haven't seen this movie when it was released in the theaters. Some of you may have heard of this as a very famous soundtrack, but just use the clues and try and figure out. Maybe you could approach it from your knowledge of Devanand films, maybe from your knowledge of films with titles that could probably suggest something to do with inspectors, or you just know this outright. Most popular guess is Jewel Thief. In fact, Jagdish Raj is in the film, and if I remember correctly, he's not playing a cop in this, surprisingly. So, which movie? Okay, it's not Jewel Thief. It's not Jewel Thief. It's got a terrific soundtrack. It's not Jewel Thief. It's actually made by. It's produced by Guru Dutt, if I remember correctly. All right, so we still don't have the answer. The most popular guess so far is Jewel Thief, not the right answer. And moments like these is when you try and pull out those random guesses that help you win applause at quizzes. And I think all of you have or will experience that someday. It is in guide as well, so I think we are running out of knowledge of Dev Anand. But again, think of what film would make this a fun question to answer. Guide wouldn't be that fun. It would just be a correct answer. It wouldn't be that fun an answer. It's not The Gambler as well. And good, I know none of you are Googling at this point, which is great. You don't want to make Google smart. All right, I'm going to count down till 5 and show you the answer. And I'm sure all of you would have thought, yes, Harman, go for it. You can take a shot now. Okay, it's not Chore Police, but good guess, not Chore Police. Yeah, I think we're getting desperate here. It's not Inspector, it's not Hira Panna. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here's the answer, and Harman gets it as I pull up the slide. It is CID. Okay, terrific film made by Raj Khosla, produced by Guru Dutt, and it is CID. Okay, so it's a fun question to end your Sunday and this masterclass. Thank you so much. We'll get in touch with you. We'll send you the link again, and you can share it with your friends as well. We'll also send you the ebook I was talking about, and if you have any feedback, we'll also get in touch for you for that. All right, if you have any more questions, write to me at ramanand@thinktowin.com, or get me on Twitter, or get our channels on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and we'll see you at the next masterclass. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing now, and thank all of you for joining us today, and have a great week ahead. Goodbye.